Welcome back to another episode of Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns. Today we have a very special guest with us who's going to delve into the fascinating art of Tao. But before we introduce our guest, a quick reminder to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a review if you enjoy our content. Now let's get to our special guest today. Diane Dreher is an award-winning university professor and associate director of the Applied Spirituality Institute at the Santa Clara University. She has her PhD in English and a master's degree in counseling. She also does lectures in the Positive Psychology Guild based in the UK, creates blogs in Psychology Today, has professional coaching certifications with the International Coaching Federation, and is a heart math clinical practitioner. She is also a best-selling author and has been featured in various big-name magazines. She's recognized internationally for her research publications on positive psychology. Welcome, Diane.
Well, I'm glad to be here on Seeking the Light of a Thousand Suns. What a beautiful concept, and we need more light.
We are so happy to have you. Thank you for being with us today. To start things off, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to pursue the path of living in accordance with nature and harmony?
Certainly. I've been interested in Eastern philosophy since I was 10 years old. Although I didn't read philosophy at that age. My father was an Air Force pilot, and we were stationed in the Philippine Islands. And he brought back all kinds of art from Japan and from Taiwan, these beautiful Chinese brush paintings, which had this sense of harmony. They were all about, bamboo and rivers. And what really struck me as a child was the grace and the serenity of this art, and the fact that in Western art, we fill up the whole canvas. But in Eastern art, there's a balance between the open space or the empty space and the foreground, the bamboo or whatever is portrayed there. And the empty space is called yohaku in Japanese. It's wu in Chinese. It's the empty space. It's the space of yin, which balances out with yang, contemplation and action, repose and activity. And in the West, we're really, really too much absorbed with yang, with being busy and active all the time. But in the East, and when I was a child, I really noticed this. There's a sense of being at one with nature and learning from nature, and that nature has seasons of growth, seasons of dormancy, seasons of rebirth. So I became very inspired by all these things and came back to the States and was drawing trees in my sixth grade art class living in Missouri. And all the students in the class, they came around and laughed at me because they said, Diane does not know how to draw a tree. She has all the branches coming out of the top. And I thought, these people have never seen a palm tree. And I realized there's no one way to be a tree, and there's no one way to be, because there's yin and yang. There's a multiplicity of possibilities. So when I was in college, I began studying Eastern philosophy, meditating, got more and more involved in that, and also enjoyed planting seeds, watching things grow, learning from nature. As the Tao Te Ching tells us, we're part of nature. In fact, the Chinese calligraphy for nature, it includes the Chinese symbol for a human being. The human being is an inverted V, and the symbol for nature are two parallel lines that go through and above that inverted V. So we are part of the symbol of nature in Asian calligraphy and in Asian art. And it's something I think we could all learn from for our own personal balance, and also to live in greater harmony and balance with one another and with nature. And there's a lot of wisdom in the ancient philosophy of Taoism that I think would benefit all of us today.
Yes. Going back a little bit, what is the Tao Te Ching?
Oh, the Tao Te Ching is a book of 81 short poems that was written 25 centuries ago by Lao Tzu during the Warring States period in ancient China. And Lao Tzu and Confucius were actually contemporaries during this time of challenge and change and conflict, much like our own. And Confucius responded to all the chaos and the challenge around him by affirming family values and, having a sense of honor for elders and staying in touch with social norms. And Lao Tzu was just the opposite. He found his inspiration by walking out into nature, by learning lessons from bamboo, which is hollow at the center, bends with the wind so it doesn't break, the virtue of strength as flexibility. He learned that from nature. He also was inspired by the wisdom of a mountain stream and noticed that water is gentle and nurturing, the source of all life, and yet with perseverance, water can cut through solid rock. So that perseverance is another form of strength. He got a lot of inspiration about strength from studying nature, from just walking around and observing what he saw there and realizing that he was part of nature.
Wow. So then, would you say that is Taoism connected to any sort of religion, or is it's merely a philosophy then?
Oh, that's a really good question. I consider Taoism a philosophy and see it being completely possible to practice any religion and also be informed and inspired by Taoism, by living in harmony with the energies within and around us. There are some people who are religious Taoists and they practice very esoteric forms of meditation, but I don't do that kind of Taoist practice.
I love that. And I remember you saying that you're drawn to giving people hope, inspiration, the wisdom of nature, and connection to the one, whoever that is to each individual. And I absolutely love that. Do you have...
Absolutely. Yes.
Do you...
Especially now when the Surgeon General of the United States says that there is an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in this country, that people feel separate, cut off, isolated, and there are obviously high levels of depression and anxiety, especially among young people. We feel disconnected from the one. We need to connect to nature, to one another, and to a deeper sense of ourselves. And the wisdom of the Tao shows us how to do that.
That is just so awesome. Do you have any memorable cases or stories that you want to share that highlight the profound impact that practicing the art of Tao has done for your life?
Okay, there are a lot of examples. The Tao tells us to reflect, to be aware of yin, our inner guidance, as well as yang, the external action, and that it's really important to combine yin, reflection, with action, or else our actions are mindless actions. And without action, obviously, we just sit around and meditate and we don't do anything. So we need both. And very often, meditation, whether it's walking in nature, feeling a sense of awe at a sunset or at a beautiful redwood tree that we have out here where I live in California, finding a sense of awe and wonder in nature, reflecting, having periods of silence can bring us wisdom and connect us to our intuition. So, example, a long time ago, I wanted to go away to college. And my father was in the Air Force and we moved all around. So I applied to UCLA from where I was living and going to high school in Germany and was delighted that I was accepted to UCLA. Yay. Well, my father was then transferred back to California to Norton Air Force Base outside of Riverside. And that summer, at the end of the summer, we just arrived, I think, about 4 weeks before. I was going through my suitcases, deciding what I was going to take with me to college. And my mother came into the bedroom and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm packing up. I'm getting ready to go to UCLA." And she said, "Well, your father and I have decided to transfer your acceptance to UC Riverside, so you don't have to go away to college."
Oh, no.
And I felt betrayed, trapped, stuck, and said, "Well, why?" And she said, "We can't afford it," and left the room. So then I thought, oh my gosh, I can't go I can't go to UCLA. My parents have financial problems. We've got a real tragedy here. But actually, my fears were unfounded because that Christmas, my mother got a mink coat and a new Mercedes for Christmas. So I thought,
Oh,
there's
Wow.
something else going on, and I need to take charge of my life. So I commuted that year to UC Riverside and met a lot of really good friends, enjoyed the classes, but I did not enjoy not being able to have the college experience, to live in the dorms, to, have a sense of independence. So that summer, I worked for all these temp agencies trying to save enough money to go to school, to go to college, to be independent, and was driving down 14th Street in Riverside one Friday afternoon after finishing a short temp job. And I felt this voice inside me saying, "You're a writer. You should work there," as I passed the Riverside Press Enterprise, our local newspaper. So I drove
wow.
my little red Volkswagen that I shared with my brother into the parking lot, walked inside as a shy teenager saying, "Hi, I'm Diane Dreer. I'm a writer. I'd like to apply for a job," to one of the reporters in the newsroom. And he said, "Go upstairs to personnel." So I did. And I filled out some papers and they said, "Our college intern just gave notice this morning. Can you begin work on Monday?" Woo!
Oh my
Synchronicity.
gosh.
The
Wow.
job was 20 hours a week. I could fit it in anytime around my class schedule. It was enough to pay for tuition, books, room and board at UC Riverside, and to be independent. And also, there were all these wonderful reporters who taught me what it means to be a writer. So it was the perfect place for me to be at the perfect time. The Tao says we need to be aware of our timing. And we also need to listen to our inner voice, our inner guidance, because I think that was more than a coincidence that day.
Wow.
I would agree.
Yes.
Yeah, we have this capacity, and we get all kinds of messages outside of us from the people we know, some of them well-meaning and some of them actually trying to sabotage us. We get
Yes.
advertisements, we get political propaganda, we get conspiracy theories, and yet within us, as the Tao says, there is this source of wisdom because we're all connected to the One, and we're all connected to each other. So we can tap into that by being silent, by listening, by cultivating our ability to meditate and to tune into that source of wisdom.
Oh,
And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and sure enough, I actually managed to graduate summa cum laude from UC Riverside and get a 4-year full graduate fellowship to the PhD program at UCLA. So, so I
That's
ended up,
so amazing.
yeah, and I think what happened was that the newspaper job gave me an incredible amount of confidence, as well as just the money to support my college education.
Wow.
I love that.
So, would you mind, like, for our listeners, would you mind kind of breaking down the fundamentals of Tao?
Oh, sure. There are quite a few of them. There's the Tao Te Ching, the title. The Tao means the way or the path of wisdom, the journey of our lives, And Ching is just a sacred book, and De, spelled Te, when you take it out of the Chinese characters into our alphabet, means character. So the Tao encourages us to cultivate our inner strength, our character. That's one of the elements of Tao. To be honest, to listen to our hearts, to live by our deepest values. And then there's the concept of Pu, which is spelled Pu, okay? And there's actually a book out there called The Tao of Pu, which is, about Winnie the Pooh, which is really kind of cute.
Yes, I loved that
It's
book.
really
Yeah,
cute.
right. So, there's a real connection. Well, Pu in the Chinese characters means the uncarved block of wood, or our natural state, our authentic self. Not the self that Facebook tries to encourage us to become, which is making a lot of young women in our culture feel very inferior and inadequate, but to bring forward our authentic self, our uncarved block, not letting other people carve us up into something they want us to be, but to become who we truly are. Because in the concept of Tao, we're all part of this great tapestry of life. And yes, we're different, but our differences are what make us strong and vital, and what give us something valuable to share. So the uncarved block, our natural, authentic self.
So,
Then there's, yeah,
I'm sorry. So, would you
sure.
say then that practicing the art of Tao will help you find that authentic self?
Yes, because the Tao says, go out and study nature, which, of course, the American transcendentalists Thoreau and Emerson did, and they also read Eastern philosophy. When we study nature, we realize that every part of nature is important in its own way, that a rose doesn't want to be a sunflower or a poppy or a dandelion or a daisy, and all of these are their authentic self. Uh, if, instead of trying to become something that we're not, to realize that there's this panorama of possibilities out there in nature, and that by walking in nature and realizing how it's all part of the greater harmony, we can benefit from studying the Tao. It helps us accept ourselves on a deep level. And I think that self-compassion, self-acceptance is really vital. And when people don't have that, they're very easily misled and manipulated by externals.
I really, I know that this is also one of the fundamentals just from our notes, but something that has always just called to me in so many ways is the yin and yang, the balance.
Yes,
Talk more about that.
the Tao is all about balance of yin and yang, self and other, day and night, earth and sky. In nature, there are all these opposites that blend into the complete whole. And you've probably seen this symbol of the yin and the yang, which look like a dark fish and a white fish
Yes.
swimming together within a circle, each one having a little bit of the other. The eye of the fish is the color of the other fish. So in Eastern philosophy, this is probably the most important concept in the Tao Te Ching, which is totally the different opposite of what we have in the Western world. Instead of seeing how yin and yang combine to create harmony, we have either or, all or nothing, win or lose, my
Yes.
way or your way, which turns conflict into combat and, divides us, makes us suspicious and, anxious and about each other when we see that someone is different from us. Instead of saying, oh, yin and yang, isn't that interesting? We think,
Hmm.
that person is not like me. That person's my enemy, and we have too many examples of that in the current news all over the world. The fact that, we seem to be unable to accept differences and realize that we all share common ground. So,
Yes.
really, really important.
So this has me thinking, because even when we're working on ourselves, right, and trying to grow more on our path, when we give too much, and this is just me trying to formulate a question, I guess. So bear with me. if we
Sure.
if we give too much of ourself to others, in everyday life, I mean, we talk about, our energy and what that means, right? But then we're giving too much, that person's getting excess, and our own spirit or energy is on the brink of destruction. Would you say that that's fairly
That's an
accurate?
imbalance of yin and yang, self and
Yes.
other.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yes.
Uh, the Tao talks a lot about energies. We need to be mindful of our energies, and there are a lot of Taoist exercises, Tai Chi, Aikido, Qigong,
Yes.
which deal with energies. And we need to be mindful of our energies. And if we give too much of our energies away, we get depleted. We become codependent. We become, burnt out, wiped out. So we need to replenish our energies, just like any part of nature. You can't you
Yes.
can't just use something up. Although there seems to be a tendency to do that with nature when people see nature as a product instead of a process. But
Yes.
yeah, we need to recognize that we're in process, and if there's some people in our lives who are energy drains, we need to be mindful of that and set boundaries.
Absolutely. I think, like, even a good analogy that I was just thinking of is, how when you're on an airplane, they tell you that if you've got a child with you, if the plane were to crash, you need to put your oxygen on yourself first and then put it on the child.
Yep.
Because otherwise, then you won't be able to have the energy or oxygen to put on the child, and then you both are at
Yep.
risk.
Right. Exactly. We can't give
Okay.
what we don't have. Uh,
Yes.
if we
I like
deplete
that.
ourselves, and especially for women in this culture, which,
Yes.
we get conditioned to be the caregivers and the caretakers and, to have compassion for others. And there's a wonderful psychologist, Kristen Neff in Texas, who does research on self-compassion, that unless we are compassionate to ourselves, we can't really give to others. We just give out, and we're no use to anybody. So
Yes.
that balance of yin and yang is absolutely essential in all healthy relationships.
Wow,
And there
did
are a
that
lot of
really,
unhealthy relationships that don't have it.
There are. Oh,
just that statement just alone really hit home pretty hard.
yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. You know, uh, there it is possible to have like too much of a good thing, which is imbalance. And we can have imbalance in our diet, imbalance in exercise, imbalance in giving to others, imbalance in taking. So the Tao is all about the importance of balance in nature, that if you're going to, I have still a few tomato plants growing on the south side of my garden, which is, in the sun. They
Yes.
need a certain amount of sun. They need a certain amount of water. And, you've got to have the balance. If you overwater something, it kills it.
Oh,
We can
yeah.
overwater people in our relationships, giving them too much and making them dependent on us. And then they don't develop their own sense of center and agency, which is not healthy for them or for us.
I think that that's, because I know personally, I know a lot of us have been there. I've been there so many times where I've given, given, give, and it's almost, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I always like to see that balance as similar to the Force in Star Wars.
Mhm.
And when I give and give and give too much, I almost feel a little bit of my life force being pulled away. And, energy never dies, so it's being transformed into something else, but it's no longer my energy that I'll need to be able to keep helping. And then, eventually if we were to give up, right? Which, I mean, not to get depressing sounding, but if we were to give up and give so much of our energy that we have very little to nothing left, then we end up in that death and then later rebirth cycle all over again.
Yeah, yeah. And what's happened with a lot of the healthcare workers, especially
Yeah.
during the pandemic, is a lot of them just got burned out.
Yes.
Uh, and a lot of the teachers, at least where I live, uh, have been giving so much. They are underpaid, so that and the schools are undersupplied with paper and pens and coloring books and uh, basic supplies for the elementary school students. So the teachers, with their meager salaries, go out and buy this stuff and give to their students, and then they don't have enough to to buy groceries. I mean, so they figure
Yes.
I can't work like this anymore. So they've quit their jobs and gone into something else. So we have to have a sense of balance and to respect other people as complete human beings, yin and yang. To balance with them. A lot of college students have been taken care of so well by their parents that
Mhm.
my colleagues and I did something called the Controlling Parents Survey in one of my psychology publications, and there are parents who will call their student who's away at college, telling them, okay, you need to study. You've got a midterm on Thursday. The students send them all their syllabus so the parents know what's going on. And some parents actually write the papers for their students and send
Yeah.
them as an email attachment so the student can turn them in.
That's
So,
sad.
what do the students learn by such behavior? They learn that
Right.
somehow I can't do it myself. I've got to get a parent or a parent figure to do it for me. And that's
That's
not healthy for an
no.
emerging adult, you know. Yeah, we actually had one student who got a job, and she had her first, evaluation on the job, and it wasn't perfect. So her mother went with her to see her supervisor, saying, "You need to give my daughter extra time because she has attention deficit disorder." No,
Oh,
not at work. How embarrassing.
yes.
So again, with good intentions, but it's like overwatering a plant, That's not healthy behavior for the parent or for the student.
Right. And then, so going further into then the fundamental principles, um, I and I'm skipping one here. I'm gonna have Christy or I'm gonna have Maya say this. Um, feng shui, or is it
Feng
feng
shui, yes.
feng shui?
That's perfect. Good pronunciation. Feng
Thank you.
shui is to arrange our homes or our offices in a way that affirms harmony and that is not cluttered, with excessive yang, that brings out the best in us. And there are feng shui practitioners who have, principles that they follow in helping people arrange their environments so that they are harmonious. And part of it is how we feel in that environment, But there are some principles of having flow of access. So you want to come in one door, and there's one of my friends told me, you don't want your front door and your back door to be parallel to each other, because that means that the money that comes into the house goes right out the back door. So if you
Oh,
have that,
yes.
you can imagine that. If
Yes.
you have that, you need to put a mirror somewhere so that the access of the energy gets reflected back into the house.
Oh, I like that.
There are ways
I
of dealing with structures to make them more feng shui harmonious. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So the art of feng shui, I know is for, making harmonious and an energetic balance in your space.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that how this is arranged would be based on things like the five elements, for example? Or is it based off of something else entirely?
That's a good question. Almost everything in a certain amount of Chinese medicine, healthcare, philosophy is based on the five elements. So wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. I have a friend who's a Chinese acupuncturist and herbalist, and she diagnoses each of us by our dominant element. We each have supposedly these five elements within us, and but we have a dominant element. And what we'd want to do is to balance these elements in our space and in our lives. So, if you'd like to hear more about the five elements, I can go into that. That every element has its own strengths, its own challenges, and then
Right.
we need to find a balance within whatever that is. So if you're a wood person, you have great determination, you're adventurous, you have a strong sense of purpose. But the challenge there is that a person can get carried away with the sense of purpose and become over focused on it, stressed and impatient and angry when things don't go well. So yeah,
Oh.
having a strong
Oh.
having a strong sense of purpose is good, but if it goes too far, it makes us very stressed and irritable.
Oh my
So
goodness.
so we need to find our balance and to have times for play as well as for pursuing our purpose. Then there's fire, which is energetic, enthusiastic, love to talk and motivate others. So, these people are really good in leadership positions. But the challenge with too much energy and enthusiasm, a person whose fire can suffer from insomnia and get, heart racing and can get overly anxious, with too
Mm.
much yang energy going through there. So again, we need to find a balance of time for yin, reflection, meditation, to balance out all that energy and enthusiasm of the fire sign. And then, which brings me to something that connects with what came up earlier. If your dominant element is earth, your strength is being nurturing and grounded and practical and seeking harmony and connection with others. All that sounds wonderful. But the challenge for earth signs is that we can worry excessively and
Yes.
need to be needed and become codependent and give away too much of our energy to others.
And then hide in our shells for a
Yeah,
while
right,
to try
because
to
we
revitalize.
exactly. You think, "Oh my gosh," and then we need to retreat, in order to recharge
Yes.
ourselves. So, instead of going from one extreme to the other, Earth people need to develop healthy boundaries, spend time in nature,
Yeah.
and, again,
Can
seek
you tell I'm an
balance.
earth?
Yeah, right. And then what's really, I mean, it's fascinating. There's metal, which is that metal people are brave, faithful, intellectual, disciplined, and dedicated to ideals. And you can see what a challenge would be for a metal person
Oh, yeah.
when the ideals are not met. Maybe not because of anything that the person has done, but because of the way the world is. A metal person can get very depressed, and you know, a disillusioned idealist is not a happy person. So again, the advice would be regular exercise, meditation, breathing, being present instead of being totally wrapped up in our ideals. It's wonderful to have ideals to inspire us, but we need to keep our feet on the ground as well as our head in the clouds. And then the last one is water. And water people are determined, self-sufficient, introspective, wise, and able to flow into the best paths to resolve problems. And water people are very independent. A stream flows of its own accord. So when water people are out of balance, they can become fearful and isolated because they're out of touch with community. They're trying to do it all themselves. So again, seek our balance, cultivate community, recognize our connection with the larger whole, which might be meditating on the patterns of nature and also actually connecting with the people around us. So there's again, we each have a dominant tendency, and we each need to seek our balance. I mean, that's the wisdom of Tao.
Yes.
Wow. Would you say that it's possible to have two strong ones at the same time?
Our brains were thinking the same.
Oh my.
Sure. You can. I mean, you can have. You can be dominant dominant wood, for example, and then have a really strong secondary element of fire or metal or something. Sure. And the message is the same. Whatever our greatest strength can also be our greatest weakness if it goes to extreme. So we need to find our balance.
That's right. So you're talking about these different people, and you're talking about their strengths and their struggles and stuff like that. And I know that you wanted to touch on Tao and conflict resolution. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, when we were talking about yin and yang and the fact that in the West we tend to see things as either or, as what is academics call the logical fallacy of the false dilemma. I mean,
Yes.
it's a fallacy,
It
and
is.
it's a false dilemma. It's either one extreme or the other. What happens when people get in conflict is that they can get stressed. Imagine that, right?
Mhm.
And stress, unfortunately, shuts down our immune system, our digestive system, creates inflammation in the body. All these, inflammatory hormones go to help us fight, flight, or freeze. And it also shuts down our higher brain centers. So we can't think creatively. We can't think of nuance. All we can think of is, fight, flight, or freeze, which are not really good at solving problems unless we're in the jungle and we're walking around and we hear this, crackling noise of someone walking and crunching behind us, and we realize it's a wild animal, and we have to run for our lives, fight, flight, or freeze. That can save us. But most of the conflicts we get into can't really be solved by fight, flight, or freeze, and can't be solved when our higher brain centers are shut down and all we can see are either or, all or nothing, win or lose. So that one way to resolve conflict is to, first of all, become aware of when we're stressed and to take deep breaths, mindful breathing, sometimes put our hands on our hearts to get centered. Or there's an Aikido exercise where if you're standing, you can breathe into your hara, which is a point of power, which is right below the navel. And just breathe into that, bend your legs a little bit, get into this stance, which is the first stance in Aikido when we're being attacked. And what happens is we then get centered. We can act wisely and flexibly and deal with the problem. So actually, I've used this to dispel stress when I'm just waiting in line, and instead of being irritable or whipping out my cell phone and getting distracted, I can just get into a centered stance, which is good for my health. And it's actually, if our energies affect the energies of people around us, there's research on that with the Heart Math Institute in Northern California. They've done all this scientific research on the fact that if you take a centered person and put that centered person, who is, they call them heart coherent, in a room with other people, it makes a difference. And also, frantic, uncentered people, their energies can infect us or affect us too.
Yes.
You can feel it when you go into a room. So number one, be aware of when we're stressed and take some kind of action to deal with that stress. And then when we're not stressed, to look for the common ground, the larger whole that includes the yin and the yang. I have this exercise that I've done in my workshops to have people, first of all, to give them a list of opposites, night and day, mountain and valley, in and out, all these different opposites, and have them look for the larger whole that includes the two supposed opposites. So mountain and valley could be a landscape. Night and day could be Tuesday. One day includes both. And black and white could be a photograph, could be any number of things. It doesn't have to be black or white, although with a certain amount of racism, people seem to see only the opposites and the divisions. But we can create, again. So I have them do all this and then give them a conflict scenario and see how they can find common ground in the conflict. And because there's always common ground, we're living on it. It's called planet Earth.
Yes.
We just need to look more deeply beneath the surface of our conflict. So if you have a couple and they're complaining about, oh, I want to go to the movies. No, I want to go out to dinner. Well, what can they do? They can
Dinner
say,
and a movie.
yeah, exactly. There's even a theater in the town next to mine that serves dinner during the movie. they can have both at once. So it's not just either or; it's both and. To find and to become really wise and creative, look for the common ground, and to look at the person that we disagree with not as the enemy or as the opponent, but as a conflict partner who has valuable information that can help us come to a new creative resolution. It is possible. I wish that more people would practice Taoist conflict resolution in our world
Yes.
today.
I totally agree. So, what are other techniques that our listeners can do as well for gaining knowledge or living in harmony with the universe?
Well, they can do something that we're all doing right now, but do it mindfully. Mindful breathing.
Yes.
We're going to breathe anyway. It doesn't cost us anything. A lot of the advertisers would not be happy that we're talking about this, but actually slowing down, mindful breathing, breathing into our hearts, breathing into the hara. When we feel ourselves feeling overwhelmed or stressed, when we're racing through life, becoming too yang, to just pause, give ourselves a yin break. Look up at the sky. If we can walk outside and look at the sky, look up at the trees, connect with nature is one way. Connect with our breath in a slow, mindful breathing, which activates our parasympathetic nervous system and calms us down. and helps us think more creatively, and is good for our health. So doing that. Meditation practices. There are as many meditation practices. There are more than I can count. There's meditating on nature, going out and, looking at the sky, looking at a tree, closing our eyes, meditating on our breath, meditating on a heartbeat, meditating on a passage that's inspirational. A lot of people practice passage meditation because to affirm loving kindness meditation, for example. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be guided by the light. May I be happy. And then you think of someone else you know and say, may you be filled with loving kindness, and all the rest. And then finally, may all beings be filled with loving kindness. If we do the loving kindness meditation, it helps us in ways that experimenters have measured physically, emotionally, psychologically. But I also believe that since we're all connected, we're all part of the one, that our energies of loving kindness can go out and help heal the planet.
Mm.
There are affirmations that we can say. When I'm around someone who's really irritable and angry, I used to, be a department chair at my university, and people would come in and complain. I was practicing Aikido at the time. I'd get off the line, which means you just sort of step aside and don't let them blast you with their negative energy, and just tell yourself, that's not my energy. I am one with Tao. You don't need to say it out loud, but just
Yes.
remind yourself, instead of reacting to this anger energy, to just step aside and tell yourself, that's not my energy. I am one with source, one with the force, if you'd like to go back to Star Wars.
I love that.
Yeah. And then there's gratitude. There's a psychologist, Robert Emmons at the UC Davis, who's done lots of research on gratitude. I interviewed him a long time ago. And this is the most powerful positive psychology intervention. And it's so simple to, at the end of the day, to think of 3 things that we're grateful for and write them down. And what that does for our health, emotional, physical, social, spiritual, is incredible. And it's so simple. But it's necessary because we human beings have a negativity bias.
Mm-hmm.
You notice it when you're driving down the road and there's an accident on the side of the road, and everybody sort of looks to the side, and then, of course, they crash into the car in front of them because they're not looking where they're going, and then we have another accident. There's a sense that we're drawn to the abnormal, the dangerous, the threat. We have to, we can't take our eyes off of it. And newspapers are aware of this fact, so they put, if it bleeds, it leads on the front page.
Yeah.
And social media and the network news, same thing. So we get inundated by all of this stressful information that comes at us, and we react to it. So to balance yin and yang, too much
Yeah.
yang, we need to find the heart-centered yin focus of gratitude.
I love that.
And I've
I'm
seen
going to use these.
yeah, and I've seen gratitude journaling in so many things. I've seen it in so many so many different types of teachings, and even with people having struggles for mental health. The gratitude journal, you also see that come up an awful lot as well, like looking at things from a place of being grateful for taking the time and being grateful for things that are positive versus like with all the negative things going on in the world. and like you said, being out of balance instead of focusing on everything that didn't go as planned. Or
Yeah, because there are some things, amazingly enough, that are outside of our control. The Western, view of the individual is that we're separate and we're supposed to be in control of our lives and control our environment. Well, this is totally ridiculous. We're not separate from the one. We're all connected. And we're not totally in control of the weather, for example, or the news. But what we can control is our attention. What we give our attention to becomes paramount in our lives and affects us very deeply. So we can choose to put our attention in the positive, especially after all the losses that people have experienced during COVID, which people are still dealing with, grieving loss of loved ones, loss of health, loss of jobs, loss of community, loss of just a sense of safety in our world. We can't control those things, but what we can do is focus our attention to counterbalance that on the small elements of beauty that we can find in our world around us. I mean, I love looking at the sky. I consider it the greatest show on Earth, or the greatest show for Earth, because it's not really on Earth. Every day, the sky is different. We have sunrise, sunset, we have clouds, we have stars at night. I mean, it's fantastic. It's a great show. And actually, we had an eclipse not too long ago, which a lot of people were very excited about. So to be in a sense of awe and gratitude at the beauty of nature. And there are all kinds of studies that show that connecting with nature is incredibly good for our health.
right. And I love how much knowledge and background and how much you're willing to share on all of this. And I know that our podcast will never be long enough to give in detail the amount of things that are beneficial with this practice. But I also know that you have meditations, you've authored books, you have workshops, webinars, and so many things that our listeners can go to for additional resources. So, can you let our listeners know where they can find these things?
Oh, great. Certainly. I have a website, which is www, of course, dianedreher.com. That's spelled DIANEDREHER.com. And my website lists my books. There are 5-minute meditations, which are, you can listen to, you can click on. There's a whole lot of them about nature, about finding peace within ourselves, resolving conflict, following the Tao. There are, I have a blog that I have posted there with lots of information and inspiration. And there's information on my workshops. I also do personal coaching. So there's a way to click on that and get more information. So, yes, I welcome people to come to my website. I also, excuse me.
Do
Yeah,
you also have a podcast as well?
excuse me. I don't have my own podcast, but there are dozens of podcasts linked on my website.
Okay, that's what I saw. There's also like some YouTube stuff and stuff on there too.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole list of media there. And if people go to my website, I will send them the centering exercise from Aikido, from the Tao Te Ching.
Awesome. What would you recommend that a beginner start with if this is something that they want to pursue? I know, do you have specific recommendations on your writings?
Yeah, actually, thanks for asking. I've written 3 books on Taoism, 1 book on spiritual aspects of gardening, and another book about Renaissance practices. The first book, The Tao of Inner Peace, is probably the best introduction to the Tao. There's another book called The Tao of Womanhood about how women can find their balance in this complex world. And then there's a Tao of Personal Leadership, which is how leaders can use yin and yang principles to resolve conflict and to help us create a more harmonious world. But principally, the introduction to Taoism in the Tao of Inner Peace would be a good place to start. And actually, my book, that one has come out in 3 different versions now and is just out as an audio book from Penguin Random House in 2022. So people can listen to it if they prefer to get their Taoist messages orally as opposed to in writing.
And do you have any upcoming scheduled workshops or webinars?
I do webinars for the Positive Psychology Guild in the UK, and I'm not doing any more webinars in the near future because I'm in the middle of writing my next book.
Oh, awesome. Okay. All right. Well, we are running short in time, so I just want to say thank you so, so much for being here with us and for sharing all of this information. I would agree with you that the Tao is a practice that can benefit anyone and everyone, regardless of where you are at spiritually. And yeah, again, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share this information with everybody.
Yes,
Well, thank you.
you.
It's
Thank
been
you,
my
Diane.
pleasure. You ask wonderful questions, and I hope that the listeners will really connect to their authentic wisdom, to their authentic selves, and to the fact that we're all connected, and to find their own personal balance of yin and yang. Because as we do that individually, we also contribute to the collective energies of our beautiful planet. So thank you very much.